Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Path to DevOps series. Finally, again. My name is Shiki and today we're going to go through the migration to HELM. I'm sorry we've taken such a long break until this episode since the last one in the Path to DevOps series, but I had to explain a few more Kubernetes concepts and basically what HELM is, so that today we can actually transition to using HELM in our CI/CD pipelines. Now, if this sounds fun, let's jump straight into business. If you've been on the channel before, I think you already know that I want to give you the best learning experience possible. And I feel that if I tell you we just need to migrate to HELM and that's it, this won't offer you the best learning curve possible, which is why I want to give you the arguments behind why we should migrate to HELM. And before giving you those arguments, let's talk about the current setup, which is this one. We have a simple YAML manifest, which contains two Kubernetes objects, one service and one deployment. And then there's like some replacement logic intertwined, which allows us to configure the service and deployment for each of the three microservices in our stack: the cart API, the product API, and the front end. And that's basically it. It's fairly simple, but it's not an industry standard. And this is why I would like us to migrate to HELM. Actually, I'm going to give you three reasons why. The first one, as I said, it's not an industry standard, and basically no one uses plain YAML files to deploy to production. That's just not the best practice here. When you have a lot of YAML files to manage, it will become pretty cumbersome and complicated, and we try to steer away from that. We want a management tool for all those complicated YAMLs, and HELM is one option. Second reason is HELM will be a great tool on your resume or on your CV, whatever you want to call it. And the third reason is the fact that we can use more advanced logic like conditionals and certain functions inside of the HELM templating language. And in the actual Kubernetes series, which is ongoing on this channel, you can learn more about HELM. I will link the video at the end of this one. So with these three reasons in mind, let's go ahead and create a custom HELM chart which will service all of our applications. And now the moment everyone has been waiting for, creating our custom HELM chart for the barbart stack of microservices. And again, barbart is just a name I chose for the three microservices we're deploying in this Path to DevOps journey. So nothing to be scared about, okay? We're just creating a custom HELM chart for our three microservices. But now, there are two ways we can go about creating the HELM chart. The first one is to use the helm create command and ask the HELM engine to provide a blueprint for us, which is basically a HELM chart prepackaged with some custom objects and some custom templating language. But I fear that this is a bit too complex for you guys, and I also have a video on HELM on the Kubernetes journey series, which is going in parallel on this channel, which I will link at the end of this video. But I would propose a second alternative, which is to create our own HELM chart manually from scratch. And I hope this will demystify HELM for you and make you understand that it's not this big beast you need to face. It's just a simple technology and a simple templating language that you can use on a day-to-day basis. So as you can see right now, I am in the Path to DevOps _Azure_DevOps folder, which is basically my local version of the Path to DevOps Azure DevOps repo in GitHub. So whatever we create here, it will actually be published to GitHub and you will be able to download to follow along and to inspect. Okay. And one more thing I want to mention is right now we are on a separate branch. We're not on main. You can see here we are on feature/adding_HELM. Okay. And this is where we will add our custom HELM chart. So first things first, let us create the folder, okay? So I will actually name the chart barbart after the stack of three microservices that we're deploying. And in here, we just need to add some specific folder structure of the HELM charts, okay? And we're going to keep this as basic as possible, okay? The first thing we need to add is a file called .helmignore, and as a Docker ignore or as a Git ignore. It acts as an ignore file in which you put some extensions or some file patterns which you don't want your chart to take into configuration. And I'll actually steal this from an existing chart that I have, which was created using the helm create command. But again, it's basically ignoring these folders and these formats and these ID specific locations. Okay, nothing complex about this. All right, then we need two more things. We need the chart.yaml file, so I will create a new file here which is chart.yaml with capital C, and inside of this one we need an API version. I will also steal this from a different chart. It's v2, and then we need the name of the chart, and this also needs to correspond with the name of the folder. In our case, it's going to be barbart, and then we can add a description. Yeah, so the description can be like this. Then we need to specify our chart type. There are two types of charts. One is application, the other one is a library. Ours is an application. You have here all the explanation. Basically, a library is used by other charts. An application, it deploys applications on its own, and that's exactly what we're trying to do. So it's an application type chart. Okay, and then you also need a chart version because we're still developing it. I'm fine with having version 0.10. Okay, and for now I think this is enough. We don't need to add anything more into the chart.yaml file. And we can move on to the other file that we should have here, which is values.yaml. And in here, we are going to have all the inputs, which are going to configure our templates. And by templates, I mean the Kubernetes objects like service, deployment, ingress, and so on, which we are going to add. Okay? Again, keeping things as simple as possible, I'm going to add the templates folder. This is how it has to be named, and inside of it I will add a service.yaml and a deployment.yaml. Reiterating that we want to keep things as simple as possible, we're just going to close all of the open editors, just so you can see I'm not cheating, yeah. And we're going to go into the actual Kubernetes manifest that we are now using, and I'm going to copy what's inside of service, and let's put it inside of service.yaml, and then let's copy whatever is inside of the deployment and also add it inside of deployment.yaml. Okay, so now we have contents for our service and for our deployment. We just need to change the language a bit, okay, because now obviously we're relying on a Helm chart. Okay, and the only point of entry in a Helm chart template should be made through the values.yaml file. So this is where we're going to make the replace tokens happen. Okay, so let's just scrape those replace tokens. Let's go here, for example, and we have app name once. Okay, we then have service type. Okay, we have app name again, we have the service port, and then we also have the container port. Okay, that looks good. And now let's go to deployment, and we have app name one more time. We also have replicas. So let's go here and add replicas. Then we also have app name three more times. We have the full image name. So let's go to values and add this one as well. And then we have container port, which is obviously already declared inside the service. So what are we going to do with these replace tokens? Well, we need to give them some keys. So these are going to be the values, but we need to give them some keys inside of the values.yaml file. Okay, so for example, app name, we can actually call it app name. Okay, and then service type, I'm going to actually create a map. It's going to be called service, and this one is going to contain two keys. First one is going to be type, and we'll have this value. And the second one will be port, and we'll have this value. Okay. And then we're going to actually have container port, let's call it like this. Okay, and then we're going to have number of replicas, so let's call it replicas. And then we also need to have the full image name. Okay, so let's call it like this. Okay, again, keeping things as simple as possible. Yeah, we're not going to add a lot of Helm functionality today. We're going to add it as we progress and we start using Helm more and more. Right now, we're just keeping things as they are. I'm just going to show you how to translate a YAML manifest, which has replaced tokens, to a simple, very simple Helm chart. Okay, so we've done this now. I will take and split right, there we go. Yep. And now we see them, so I can use the Helm templating language here, which looks like this. Okay, don't get scared. Again, if you want to learn more about it, I have a video which will be linked at the end of this one, but it's .values .app name. Yeah. And now basically I'm referencing this guy from here, from values.yaml. Okay, and now this one will just be a template which can contain any value, and the replace will be done at the values.yaml level. And as the chart grows and we add more and more functionality, you will see how handy this templating language will become for us. Right now, let's continue and replace this everywhere. So we now have .values .replicas. There we go. Then we have .values .app name. I can just copy this one and add it here and here, and I can actually do a full image name here. Yeah. Then I can add the container port. There we go. And that's about it for the deployment. And now for the service, again, app name. In here we call it like this. Yeah, so values.service.type. Okay. And these keys, you can create them any way you want. Okay. So values service type, and in here is going to be values service port, and it's also container port. There we go. And this is about it. Yeah, we created our simple Helm chart. Let's push this and see how it feels when we use it in the pipeline. So as you can see, I added the Helm chart 1 minute ago into the GitHub repository, which is public, so you guys can pull the Helm chart and actually look at it, try to play with it, understand what it's doing. And also I added the same Helm chart into the tools repository in my Azure DevOps organization. Okay, so now it can actually be used by the deployment pipeline. Instead of using the YAML manifest, we can refactor the pipeline to use the Helm chart. In terms of logic, what we need to take into consideration is that when we run a pipeline on the agent in the same folder, we will copy everything that's inside the tools repo as well as what's inside the code repo. Let's take Cart API, for example. So everything in here and everything in here will be dumped in the same folder on the agent that's running our pipeline. So we don't need to change a lot, okay, in order to use the Helm chart instead of the Kubernetes manifest. If we look at the pipeline deploy.yaml, you will see that there's a line here on line 65, which basically says I'm looking, so get child item, where the item's name is like Kubernetes _manifest dot whatever. So this tells us that we're trying to replace tokens inside of the Kubernetes manifest. But now, because we're using a Helm chart, we need to actually replace the tokens in the values.yaml file. Okay, that's the only change we need to make. And then instead of kubectl apply on the Kubernetes manifest, we need to use a different command called helm install. Yeah, but that's basically it. So how do we make this happen? Well, it's fairly simple. We need to modify this command right here. Instead of get child item and search for Kubernetes manifest, because this sits in the root of the folder, we actually need to search inside of the barbart directory. So we need to search recursively, yeah, in subfolders as well. And we need to search for values.yaml instead of Kubernetes_manifest this time around. Okay, and that's the only change we need to make here, because everything else relies on variables. So not a lot of refactor to do. And then in the end, we would need to change the kubectl apply to actual helm install command. But I'm not going to deploy to Kubernetes yet. We will do this in a future video. I just want to show you guys on the screen that the Helm template renders successfully as YAML manifests. And the way we do that is by using Helm template command. And I've already done these changes on a different branch. So if you look here, I am on cart API repo and on feature adding _ helm, and I've already made the changes. So this is the first change I was talking about. GCI get child item recurse. So we're searching in subfolders as well, where the name of the item equals values.yaml, and then we save the full name, and that's what we need. It's basically the path to that file. And then in the end, I commented everything, and I'm just doing a Helm template on the barbart Helm chart. Okay, that's basically it. And I will add these changes into the GitHub repo here, yeah, on the pipeline deploy.yaml. So you'll be able to copy them and follow along. Okay. Now, that being said, let's look at a pipeline run. Okay, so let's go to pipelines. Let's select cart API and let's run the pipeline. And instead of running it from master, we are going to run it from feature adding helm. And when we run the pipeline, we need to wait for an agent to take the job. But in terms of logical process, what we expect to happen in the pipeline is the chart will be downloaded in the folder, and then we will replace tokens inside of the values.yaml file of the chart. And then when we do Helm template, we should see two Kubernetes objects. One will be the service and one will be the deployment, because that's basically what Helm does. The chart contains only two objects at the moment, the service and the deployment. And in future videos, we will add more objects to the chart and expand on its logic. But right now, only two of them, yeah? And as you can see, the pipeline was successful. And if we go to the deploy to AKS step, you will see that I have here the result of the Helm template command. And as you can see, the values.yaml got replaced successfully. Yeah. And when we templated everything, this is how the service looks, and it looks very nice. And this is how the deployment looks. Yeah. And it also looks like an actual deployment. Okay. If you want to check this out, you can look in the prepare deployment step as well. And this is the content of the values.yaml file after the replace token. Yeah. So the app name was replaced with cart API. The service type is cluster IP, service port is 8080, container port is also 8080, number of replicas 2, and the full image name is this one. Okay, so now we've refactored our cart API pipeline, which means we also need to refactor the product API and the front end, and I will leave you guys to do that on your own, because now you have the model from cart API. But basically we have the refactoring going, and this allows us to use a Helm chart instead of the Kubernetes manifest, which you will see in the future, it would have been clunky to maintain. Now, this is it for today, guys. Thank you for giving me your time until now. And if you're still watching at this moment in the video, you're the real OG. I'll see you next time when we add improvements to our Helm chart and also transition to other goodies which will improve our stack of applications and make our deployment look a lot more professional than it does now. Thank you again, and I wish you a great rest of the day. See you next time. Cheers.